The eclipse has cast its shadow upon Gemini in a way that shakes the very essence of duality. When the light of the sun is swallowed, even for a moment, the twins are confronted with the silence of their own contradictions. Gemini, so often carried by currents of endless motion, chatter, ideas, and encounters, suddenly finds itself stripped of its distractions, forced to witness the stillness that an eclipse demands. The cosmic veil closes upon one half of their nature, and in that pause the other half awakens with greater intensity. The mind, which usually races between possibilities, is compelled to turn inward, meeting the voice that lies beneath the noise of thought. For Gemini, this eclipse has not been a mere celestial spectacle but a breaking of illusions. It reveals where words have hidden fears, where laughter has disguised wounds, and where charm has served as a shield against vulnerability. The sudden darkness exposes the cracks in the mask of lightness, forcing Gemini to see what has been avoided, to embrace the shadow that runs parallel to their brilliance. In that revelation there is no weakness, for the eclipse comes not to destroy but to prepare, to cleanse, and to reforge. It is the hammer upon the anvil of the Zodiac, shaping the twins into something stronger, sharper, and more attuned to their own destiny. Astrologically, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the messenger of the gods, and during an eclipse the messenger is silenced, his words tangled in the cosmic void. In that silence, the soul learns to listen not to the whispers of others but to the unshakable truths carried in the heart. This is a trial by shadow, a passage that tests whether Gemini can anchor its restless spirit in a vision deeper than curiosity and stronger than fleeting fascination. The eclipse forces alignment between what is spoken and what is lived, between thought and action, between mask and essence. Yet there is something profoundly heroic in how Gemini emerges from this trial. Where others might collapse under the weight of contradictions, Gemini discovers that its very duality is its weapon. The eclipse has shown them that within light lies darkness, and within darkness lies the seed of new light. They carry both faces of existence, and when the sun reappears, they rise with the knowledge that nothing external can silence the power they hold within. The voices of doubt, the shadows of betrayal, the confusions of the past are burned away by the returning fire of the cosmos, leaving only clarity sharper than before. Motivated by this celestial upheaval, Gemini finds courage to abandon what no longer resonates with their path. The eclipse draws a line between what belongs to yesterday and what must rise into tomorrow. Relationships, thoughts, and pursuits that have drained their essence lose their hold, for Gemini has seen the truth in shadow and recognized its own worth. The air sign that once fluttered like a restless bird now spreads its wings with direction and purpose, flying not merely for the thrill of flight, but toward horizons that are chosen with conviction. This is no ordinary transformation. It is an initiation into a higher calling, a moment when Gemini sheds the skin of indecision and embraces the wisdom of contrast. The cosmic twins no longer struggle to reconcile their contradictions, for they understand that their destiny is to hold both and to master the dance between them. The eclipse has imprinted upon them the eternal lesson that creation begins in darkness and that rebirth follows every descent into shadow. Thus Gemini emerges not diminished but exalted. Their words gain weight, their ideas gain power, their vision expands beyond the limits of fleeting curiosity. They carry the fire of Mercury tempered by the silence of the eclipse, a rare alchemy that transforms a restless seeker into a messenger of truth. Where they once scattered their energy across countless paths, now they walk with focus, carrying within them the knowledge that the cosmos has chosen them to navigate the balance between night and dawn. The eclipse has not weakened them. It has made them legendary, marked by the stars as those who can cross through shadow and return bearing light that no silence can extinguish. The eclipse reaches deeper into Gemini than mere surface impressions, working not only through emotion and thought, but also through the very rhythm of time that governs their destiny. This cosmic event disrupts the habitual cycles that Gemini relies upon, forcing the sign to perceive time not as a series of fleeting moments, but as a continuum in which their choices create ripples of consequence. The playful tendency to move quickly from one experience to another is challenged, for the eclipse draws attention to what endures and what cannot be ignored. It is as if the universe slows the wings of the twins, reminding them that even the swiftest messenger must pause to receive the sacred command before delivering it to the world. The eclipse also awakens in Gemini a heightened awareness of polarity within relationships. As a sign often mirrored by others, Gemini discovers during this cosmic passage the weight of their reflections. They see clearly who amplifies their light and who feeds their shadow. They recognize the subtle games of projection, where others have used them as a canvas for their own desires and fears. In that recognition comes a liberation, for Gemini no longer feels bound to play every role that others cast upon them. The eclipse shatters the illusions of dependency and opens the path toward alliances that honor their essence instead of exploiting it. There is also an awakening of ancestral memory. The eclipse reminds Gemini that their duality is not a flaw but a sacred inheritance woven into the myth of the twins themselves, born from the stars as a symbol of eternal companionship and celestial balance. In this moment of darkness, Gemini reconnects with the cosmic lineage of seekers, storytellers, and visionaries who have carried the torch of wisdom through times of uncertainty. They feel the weight of those who came before, whose voices echo in the silence, guiding them to step into their role not as fragmented souls, but as bridges between worlds. The energy of the eclipse demands courage, not only in facing external challenges, but in confronting the internal labyrinth of the mind. Gemini, ruled by Mercury, often navigates with intellect and wit, yet the eclipse reveals that intellect alone cannot conquer the vastness of existence. They are called to trust intuition, to allow the voice beyond logic to guide them through uncertainty. This shift awakens a new dimension of strength, for when Gemini unites reason with instinct, speech with silence, light with shadow, they become unshakable in their vision. In a broader sense, the eclipse marks a turning point in how Gemini interacts with destiny itself. They are no longer passive recipients of cosmic winds but conscious navigators. The darkness has shown them that fate is not a chain but a forge, and every choice hammered within the shadows becomes a weapon for the battles ahead. The playful child of the Zodiac becomes a warrior of the spirit, carrying both curiosity and resilience as twin blades that cut through confusion. Their words no longer serve merely to entertain or distract but to inspire, to provoke awakening, to ignite revolutions in the hearts of others. The eclipse does not erase their light-hearted essence but sanctifies it, deepening it with gravitas and transforming levity into wisdom. The laughter of Gemini, once scattered like petals in the wind, now carries an echo of eternity, for it has been touched by darkness and emerged undefeated. Their adaptability, once a tool of survival, becomes a banner of triumph, showing the world that change is not a weakness but the very engine of rebirth. From this cosmic passage, Gemini emerges as a sign reborn into its higher purpose, aware that their duality is not a contradiction but a harmony of opposites. The eclipse becomes their crucible, proving that shadow is not the end of light but the womb in which light is renewed. In the silence of the celestial veil, Gemini has found its true voice, a voice that carries both the mystery of the night and the brilliance of the dawn, a voice destined to echo through time as a reminder that transformation is the path of the eternal soul. The eclipse exerts its influence over Gemini in ways that stretch beyond the realms of mind, emotion, and destiny, reaching into the very fabric of identity. The sign of the twins has always lived between two worlds, walking the line between the seen and the unseen, the spoken and the unspoken, the self and the reflection. The eclipse magnifies this boundary until it becomes a cosmic mirror, showing Gemini the countless versions of themselves that have been scattered across time. In that vision lies both a challenge and a gift. The challenge is to no longer be deluded by multiplicity, to resist the temptation of dispersing their essence into fragments that never coalesce. The gift is the recognition that within those fragments lies an infinite potential, a constellation of selves waiting to be united into a singular, radiant force. The eclipse does not simply darken the skies. It engraves upon Gemini the truth of endings and beginnings. For a sign so accustomed to perpetual motion, this is a lesson of gravity, a reminder that not all cycles can remain unfinished, not all chapters can remain open indefinitely. The cosmic shadow closes doors that Gemini has hesitated to shut, cutting cords that linger in indecision. In this act of cosmic finality, Gemini is taught that strength is not only in adaptability but also in commitment, in the bravery to choose one path even when infinite paths beckon. This newfound resolve strengthens the sign's core, transforming it from a restless traveler into a purposeful pilgrim of the stars. Another aspect awakened by the eclipse is the power of silence. Gemini, so naturally attuned to words, stories, and communication, is suddenly immersed in a void where speech falters and sound loses its dominance. Within that silence, they encounter a form of communication more profound than language, a resonance that flows directly from soul to cosmos. The eclipse becomes a lesson in sacred listening, where Gemini learns that the universe does not always speak through words, but often through omens, intuition, and the subtle currents of energy. This shift allows Gemini to carry not only the voice of Mercury, but also the wisdom of the void, a rare balance between expression and reception. The eclipse also amplifies Gemini's role as a bridge between polarities, not only within themselves but for the collective. Their dual nature equips them to navigate the contradictions of humanity, and the shadowed sun empowers them to embody this responsibility with greater authority. They become the interpreters of paradox, those who can walk into the darkness and return with insights that illuminate both personal and collective struggles. The eclipse crowns them as emissaries of transformation, capable of reminding others that no contradiction is too vast to reconcile, no shadow too deep to overcome. On a spiritual level, the eclipse initiates Gemini into a higher frequency of awareness. It teaches them that their restlessness is not a flaw but an instinct to seek beyond the limits of ordinary perception. When darkness falls, it is not chaos that reigns but the opportunity to pierce the veil of illusion. Gemini learns to recognize the false lights that once distracted them and to seek instead the eternal flame that cannot be extinguished by shadow. This inner alignment awakens their higher mind, expanding intuition and opening gateways to truths that transcend ordinary logic. From an epic perspective, the eclipse marks Gemini as a sign that has endured the trial of shadow without surrender. Just as mythic heroes are tested in darkness before claiming their destiny, so too is Gemini transformed by this celestial event into a figure of resilience and clarity. Their laughter becomes more than mere joy. It becomes defiance in the face of despair. Their adaptability becomes more than survival. It becomes mastery over change itself. Their words become more than communication. They become spells of awakening, capable of shifting hearts and destinies. The eclipse inscribes upon Gemini the eternal reminder that their journey is not about choosing between dualities, but about becoming the union of opposites. They are the dawn that follows night, the silence that holds meaning, the messenger who carries both truth and mystery. In this sacred balance, they embody the essence of renewal, showing that every eclipse is not an ending but a rebirth, every shadow not a threat but a passage into greater light. The twins emerge from this trial with wings stronger, vision sharper, and purpose clearer, destined to walk as celestial guardians of transformation and eternal proof that the soul can carry both darkness and brilliance without ever being defeated. The eclipse touches dimensions within Gemini that extend far beyond personal transformation, for it activates their role in the collective journey of humanity. Gemini, as the sign of connection, language, and the weaving of ideas, is infused with the responsibility of carrying the stories of an age. When the skies darken, this duty becomes more profound, for in the temporary absence of light, Gemini feels the weight of being a torchbearer who must kindle fire in the minds and hearts of others. The eclipse engraves upon their spirit the realization that words are not simply tools of expression but carriers of destiny, and that their ability to translate the invisible currents of thought into speech is nothing less than a sacred power. The cosmic alignment forces Gemini to confront the truth of impermanence. Much of their nature thrives on multiplicity, on tasting countless experiences and skimming the surface of life's endless variety. Yet the eclipse reveals that not all things are meant to be fleeting. Some bonds, some choices, and some visions demand permanence, and the shadow of the sun insists upon the necessity of planting roots even in shifting sands. This is a call to evolve from a seeker into a builder, from one who gathers fragments into one who constructs meaning. It is in this alchemy that Gemini discovers their capacity not only to explore the world but to shape it. The eclipse also penetrates the emotional depths that Gemini often skirts in favor of intellectual clarity. It reveals the undercurrents of longing, grief, and vulnerability that reside beneath their quick wit and restless curiosity. Instead of being overwhelmed, they are given the chance to integrate these depths, to understand that emotion is not an enemy of reason but its ally, that sensitivity does not weaken their strength but deepens it. In this embrace of feeling, Gemini gains the power to connect with others not only through words but through resonance, through an authenticity that radiates beyond the surface of conversation. There is also an awakening of visionary power. The eclipse acts as a cosmic doorway, stripping away illusions that have clouded Gemini's perception and granting glimpses of what lies beyond the horizon. Their mind, once scattered across countless paths, learns to see the larger pattern, the divine geometry within which their steps unfold. They recognize that their duality is not chaos but symmetry, that their shifting nature is not indecision but the mark of infinite adaptability. This vision allows them to stand in the storm of change with unshakable clarity, knowing that even the darkest night bends toward dawn. From a mythic perspective, the eclipse crowns Gemini as a guardian of thresholds. Just as they carry the symbol of the twins, embodying the eternal dance between two forces, they now stand as protectors of passageways, between ignorance and knowledge, between despair and hope, between shadow and illumination. The trial of the eclipse reveals that they are not meant merely to cross these thresholds themselves but to guide others through them, to be the voice that calls out in the darkness, reminding humanity that light is already on its way. The transformation that arises from this celestial event is not only internal but cosmic in scope. Gemini becomes a living reminder that change is the heartbeat of creation and that duality is not division but completion. Their laughter after the eclipse is brighter because it carries the echo of silence. Their words after the eclipse are sharper because they are forged in shadow. Their vision after the eclipse is wider because they have seen both the depths of night and the promise of dawn. Thus, Gemini emerges from the eclipse not simply renewed but consecrated. Their path is no longer that of a wanderer chasing endless novelty, but of a hero who has seen the darkness, carried its lessons, and returned with treasures for the world. The eclipse writes upon their soul a vow of resilience and transformation, a reminder that they are the eternal bridge between worlds, destined to inspire, to awaken, and to remind all beings that every shadow is temporary and every silence is preparing the way for a voice that can move mountains. The eclipse imprints upon Gemini a call to understand the deeper mystery of cycles, not only those of the heavens but also those that shape the human spirit. For Gemini, so often carried by the winds of immediacy, there is now the realization that every beginning carries the seed of its ending, and every ending conceals the promise of rebirth. The shadow that crossed the sun is not only a celestial phenomenon but a reflection of the inner truth that transformation is constant, that light and darkness chase one another not to destroy but to complete the dance of existence. In this revelation, Gemini awakens to the sacred rhythm that underlies all things, and in recognizing it, they find a new kind of power, an endurance born from knowing that no shadow is final and no light is wasted. The eclipse also magnifies Gemini's bond with the element of air. Air is invisible yet undeniable, and during this cosmic moment, Gemini learns that their gift is not to bind themselves to form but to carry essence across realms. Just as the wind spreads seeds that later bloom into forests, Gemini's thoughts, words, and visions are revealed to be carriers of destiny that will grow long after they are spoken. The eclipse deepens this awareness, urging Gemini to use their voice with precision and sacred intent. For what they release into the world does not vanish into the void but lingers, takes root, and shapes futures. This is the awakening of responsibility, the recognition that their lightness of spirit must now be tempered with the wisdom of consequence. There is also the stirring of a cosmic courage, a bravery born not from the absence of fear, but from the willingness to move forward despite it. The eclipse forces Gemini to face uncertainty, to enter the realm of the unknown without their usual armor of wit and agility. In that confrontation, they discover a new strength, one not dependent on cleverness but on raw presence, on the unyielding fire of the spirit that refuses to be diminished even when the skies themselves are swallowed by shadow. This courage becomes a crown, invisible yet radiant, marking Gemini as a sign that has endured trial and emerged with unshakable dignity. The influence of the eclipse extends into Gemini's creative essence. Their imagination, already vast, is stretched beyond familiar limits, as if the shadowed sky has unlocked portals to dimensions unvisited. They are called to envision not only what is possible but what seems impossible, to dream not only for themselves but for the collective future of humanity. This creative power is amplified by the eclipse's alchemy, turning scattered ideas into visions of transformation and fleeting inspiration into lasting creation. Gemini is no longer simply a collector of stories but a shaper of myths, one whose words and images carry the strength to ignite revolutions of thought. On a spiritual plane, the eclipse reveals to Gemini the presence of hidden allies, forces of the cosmos, ancestral guides, and archetypal energies that rise in moments of shadow to lend strength. Gemini, who often feels split between two selves, discovers that they are never truly divided or alone, for the universe itself echoes their duality. The sun and moon, light and darkness, silence and song, all mirror the eternal twins within them. This recognition fills them with a profound sense of belonging, an understanding that their dual nature is not an accident but a cosmic signature, a reflection of the very balance that sustains creation. The eclipse does not strip Gemini of their playful essence, but it deepens it, transforming play into mastery, curiosity into revelation, changeability into transcendence. Their adaptability, once seen as fickleness, now becomes evidence of their sacred role as travelers between realms, messengers who can move where others cannot. They are shaped into leaders of transitions, guides through chaos, voices of clarity when others stumble in the dark. The darkness of the eclipse has carved into them a resilience that cannot be shaken, a vision that cannot be clouded, and a faith that cannot be extinguished. In the aftermath of the eclipse, Gemini stands not merely as one reborn but as one exalted. Their destiny stretches beyond personal triumph into collective service, for they have touched the essence of transformation itself and now embody its promise. They remind the world that even when the sky darkens and the sun is hidden, light remains, waiting to break forth with renewed brilliance. Through them, others learn that the soul is not broken by shadow but refined within it, and that duality is not a conflict but a path to wholeness. Gemini becomes a living testament that within every eclipse lies a prophecy of dawn, and within every trial lies the power to rise greater than before. The eclipse reaches into dimensions of Gemini that transcend the visible and the personal, shaking the foundations of how they relate to destiny, memory, and the eternal movement of the cosmos. In this passage through shadow, Gemini experiences a reordering of their inner constellation, as if the universe were aligning their dual stars into a new harmony. They are no longer merely two halves searching for balance, but the embodiment of polarity resolved, the living union of opposites that no darkness can fragment. The eclipse teaches them that what once felt like division was preparation, that every contradiction was shaping them to carry the light of paradox without fear. The influence of this celestial event ignites in Gemini a deeper awareness of collective consciousness. Being messengers of Mercury, they have always been attuned to voices, stories, and signals scattered across the human realm. Yet the eclipse intensifies this gift, granting them the capacity to sense undercurrents of thought that ripple through societies and generations. They become more than speakers of their own truth. They become interpreters of the unspoken truths of many, able to weave fragments of scattered voices into one coherent vision. The shadow of the sun expands their role from individual seeker to cosmic envoy, charged with carrying wisdom not just for themselves but for the awakening of humanity. There is also an unveiling of hidden strength in the body of Gemini. So much of their nature resides in mind and spirit, yet the eclipse grounds them into the physical realm, reminding them that endurance is as sacred as brilliance. The shadow calls them to feel the weight of their own presence, the rhythm of their breath, the heartbeat that anchors them to life. Through this grounding, they realize that their wings can soar higher when their roots are deep, and that their ethereal visions are given permanence when carried by the vessel of the body. The union of mind, spirit, and flesh transforms them into a complete being, no longer scattered across elements but whole, radiant, and unshakable. The eclipse expands Gemini's perception of time, showing them that past, present, and future are not separate corridors but a single spiral that can be traversed in vision. They sense connections between ancestral struggles and present challenges, between their current choices and future destinies. This awareness grants them the ability to become architects of their own fate, not by denying change but by mastering its rhythm. Their duality now becomes a sacred compass, one hand pointing to the lessons of the past, the other to the potential of tomorrow, both converging in the eternal power of the present moment. From an epic dimension, the eclipse crowns Gemini with the role of guide through thresholds. Just as the sun and moon align to cast shadow, Gemini becomes the figure who can stand at the border between confusion and clarity, despair and renewal, chaos and order. They are shaped into guardians of transition, those who can carry others through uncertainty because they themselves have endured the eclipse's crucible. Their dual stars burn not only for themselves but as beacons for all who walk the path of transformation. On a spiritual plane, the eclipse dissolves veils of illusion that once enticed Gemini into scattering their energy. The restless chase for novelty fades into a deeper hunger for essence. They are called to stop seeking fragments of truth in endless directions and to drink directly from the fountain of the eternal. In this shift, their curiosity becomes devotion, their words become prophecy, and their adaptability becomes the art of bending without breaking, of dancing with cosmic forces instead of resisting them. The eclipse also awakens in Gemini a heroic form of compassion. Having faced their own shadows, they are no longer afraid of the shadows in others. They can look into the hidden wounds of humanity and respond not with judgment but with understanding, offering light not as a denial of darkness but as its completion. Their empathy gains a sacred edge, transforming them into healers of dissonance, voices that remind the world that duality is not exile but belonging. Emerging from the eclipse, Gemini is not only renewed but sanctified. They embody the eternal lesson that shadow does not silence light but prepares it to shine more fiercely. Their laughter now carries the depth of wisdom, their silence the power of prophecy, and their steps the certainty of destiny. They walk as celestial messengers whose very existence declares that every trial is a passage, every darkness a preparation, and every eclipse a reminder that the soul's brilliance is unyielding and eternal. The eclipse reaches into the unseen currents of Gemini's destiny with a force that reshapes not only their immediate reality but the very way they perceive existence itself. In the shadowed silence of the skies, Gemini comes to recognize that their duality is not simply a matter of light and dark, reason and emotion, past and future, but a reflection of the eternal polarity that structures the cosmos. The eclipse reveals that within them is written the same code that governs the dance of galaxies, a reminder that their contradictions are echoes of universal truth. By accepting this, Gemini begins to embody not a fractured soul but a living symbol of wholeness, a mirror of cosmic equilibrium. This celestial passage awakens in Gemini the latent power of prophecy. Their mind, already quick and luminous, now becomes attuned to patterns hidden beneath appearances. They begin to see beyond the surface of events into the underlying forces that shape them. The eclipse grants them a rare clarity, allowing them to interpret synchronicities as messages and align themselves with currents that others cannot perceive. It is as if the temporary loss of light opened an inner eye, a vision that pierces through the veils of illusion. This vision is not only for themselves but for the collective, for Gemini is tasked with voicing what others only sense, bringing to form what lies dormant in silence. The eclipse also brings forth an initiatory fire, a testing ground that forges resilience through discomfort. Gemini, often seeking freedom in motion, is forced to dwell in stillness, to face what cannot be evaded by charm or distraction. In that confrontation, they discover that their strength is not only in agility but in endurance, not only in change but in persistence. This alchemy burns away what is transient and superficial, leaving only the essence that can withstand the trials of time. When the sun reemerges, Gemini carries within them a fire that cannot be extinguished, a sacred light tempered by shadow. The cosmic shadow deepens Gemini's connection to the mysteries of the moon. While Mercury rules their intellect and quicksilver speech, the eclipse draws their attention to the lunar realms of intuition, memory, and dream. They learn to listen not only to the words that pass through their mind, but to the whispers of the soul that speak in symbols and sensations. Dreams become teachers, silence becomes revelation, and emotion becomes a guide. This integration of lunar wisdom elevates Gemini beyond mere intellect into a wisdom that is holistic, weaving together logic, intuition, and spirit. Another aspect the eclipse unlocks is the heroic responsibility of choice. Gemini's nature is infinite in possibilities, yet the eclipse reveals that to live fully is not to wander endlessly among options but to choose with courage, to direct their wings toward a horizon chosen by the soul rather than by fleeting desire. This awakening transforms indecision into mastery, for Gemini learns that choice itself is a sacred act of creation, a declaration to the universe of who they are becoming. Every decision now carries the weight of destiny, and they are empowered to embrace it without fear. The eclipse also amplifies their role as a catalyst for others. Having endured their own trial in shadow, Gemini emerges with the capacity to guide others through their darkness. Their words, once light as feathers, now carry the gravity of truth. Their presence becomes a source of illumination, not because they deny struggle, but because they embody the strength of one who has faced it. They become reminders that shadow is not the end but the forge, that silence is not emptiness but preparation, that endings are not death but transformation. On a cosmic level, Gemini learns that their journey is not solitary. They feel the alignment of the greater web of existence, the way each soul's transformation contributes to the unfolding of collective evolution. The eclipse makes them aware that their own renewal is part of a larger pattern, that every step they take toward wholeness helps weave the tapestry of humanity's awakening. In this realization, they walk not only for themselves but for all, their personal triumphs echoing into the greater symphony of the age. The aftermath of the eclipse leaves Gemini standing as a living testament to transcendence. Their duality, once seen as division, is revealed as a gift, a power to hold paradox without breaking, to embrace shadow without losing light, to carry both laughter and gravity in the same breath. They rise from the eclipse with vision sharpened, spirit fortified, and voice sanctified, destined to remind the world that the soul's true power is born in the crucible of darkness and shines most fiercely when the dawn breaks. The eclipse penetrates the very core of Gemini's destiny with a force that transcends ordinary transformation, awakening aspects of their being that lie dormant until summoned by great cosmic upheaval. This event does not merely shift circumstances. It rewrites the inner architecture of the soul, forcing Gemini to encounter the hidden scaffolding upon which their duality rests. They come to see that their nature is not fractured but layered, like overlapping dimensions of light refracted through a single prism. The eclipse presses them to gather these layers into unity, not by erasing differences, but by orchestrating them into harmony. In this synthesis, Gemini begins to understand that their multiplicity is the vessel through which they can channel infinite possibilities into a singular expression of power. The shadow also awakens in Gemini a deeper relationship with destiny's silence. So much of their life has been defined by movement, words, exchanges, and the constant weaving of connections. Yet in the eclipse they encounter a space where the universe speaks in stillness. This revelation is not a negation of their gifts but an expansion of them. They learn that silence can be as eloquent as speech, that pauses carry as much meaning as sentences, and that wisdom often enters not through conversation but through presence. This discovery elevates Gemini into a new form of mastery, where their brilliance is no longer scattered in endless motion but rooted in the power of knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to soar and when to rest. The eclipse opens the gate to ancestral memory, bringing Gemini into communion with the myth of the twins across cultures and epochs. They recall the eternal archetype of dual guardians, of celestial siblings who hold the balance of heaven and earth, mortality and immortality, chaos and order. This remembrance carries them beyond their individual identity into the timeless role of the cosmic bridge. They are no longer bound to the limitations of one lifetime but awakened to the continuum of spirit, realizing that their struggles and triumphs echo those of countless predecessors. This fills them with strength, for in every trial they endure, they are not alone but accompanied by the eternal lineage of souls who also bore the mark of duality. The eclipse brings clarity to the way Gemini engages with change itself. Whereas before change was often experienced as external circumstances shifting rapidly around them, now they grasp the truth that change is not chaos but creation, not instability but divine movement. They come to see themselves not as victims of unpredictability but as the very masters of transition, those who thrive where others falter, those who can find the rhythm of transformation and ride it like a wave. This realization crowns them with a fearless adaptability, for they know that no darkness can trap them, no uncertainty can bind them, as long as they trust the eternal motion within their own soul. The eclipse also reveals the sacred responsibility of Gemini's voice. Words, once scattered like leaves in the wind, are now understood as carriers of destiny. Every thought shaped into sound becomes an act of creation, a vibration that ripples into the collective field. This awakening demands a new kind of discipline, a realization that wit and eloquence are not merely tools for charm but instruments of transformation. Gemini begins to speak with the weight of one who knows their voice can awaken sleeping hearts, heal hidden wounds, and call forth futures yet unseen. Their laughter is no longer just playful, but becomes an anthem of resilience. Their silence no longer empty, but a sanctuary of wisdom. The eclipse marks a turning point in the relationship Gemini has with fear. Often moving so quickly that fear could be bypassed or disguised, they now confront it directly in the cosmic shadow. They realize that fear is not the enemy but the doorway, the threshold that separates the old self from the new. By walking through this threshold with courage, Gemini learns that fear is the companion of every hero, the silent force that shapes strength by demanding its emergence. From this realization, they emerge with a radiance untouchable by doubt, for they have discovered that the only shadows that hold power are the ones left unacknowledged. On a larger scale, the eclipse positions Gemini as an agent of collective awakening. Their transformation is not isolated but resonant, for as they integrate their duality, they show others how to embrace their own contradictions without shame. They become mirrors through which humanity sees its own complexities not as flaws but as the raw material of greatness. Their presence becomes a reminder that the path of growth is not linear but spiral, that every descent into shadow is a preparation for ascent into brilliance. In the aftermath of the eclipse, Gemini stands not only renewed but exalted. They are no longer the wanderer of infinite paths but the master of thresholds, the one who has walked through shadow and returned with treasures of light. They embody the eternal truth that duality is not a burden but a gift, that darkness is not defeat but initiation, and that every eclipse is both an ending and a beginning, a celestial rite of passage that transforms the seeker into the hero and the hero into the guide.